now? A full-on attack on Central Cathedral in Underworld? And Dark Elves are becoming a thing in Unital Ring? Finally, the story is ramping up and getting some... Oh. That's yet another cliffhanger! Just when we were having the best Unital Ring experience too. Arguably. I say arguably because, well, Sword Art Online Volume 27 Unital Ring VI, it is by far the best story in the Unital Ring saga so far. It still fails to reach a satisfactory state in the saga as more and more mysteries pile up. And since the new world was established wonderfully back in the first Unital Ring volume, it has always kept feeling like we keep following a B plot and a C plot and a D plot, and there's just so many minor plots happening without the main narrative receiving any kind of reveal or any kind of breakthrough. And when there's all of that combined with the sigh you have at the end as the reader goes, oh, it's yet another cliffhanger, even the best story in the saga feels frustratingly exhausting. That is not the best time to say Amazon links for Unital Ring 6 in the description, is it? Don't worry, I have plenty of good things to say as well. So welcome everyone, this is Gamerturk's book club and we'll be diving deep into Sword Art Online 27 Unital Ring 6. A lot of people consider Unital Ring to be a slow burner, but I'll be blunt from the get-go. Keeping the reader in the dark because you cannot really focus on a proper narrative, it is not the definition of a slow burner. It's the difference between a good narrative mystery and a bad narrative confusion. A good slow burner was, for example, the Human Realm sub-arc of the Alicization saga, which unlike Unital Ring, was actually over in 6 volumes rather than piling on more and more mysteries without solving any of it. In Alicization beginning, while Kirito was in the dark, we as the reader were already in the loop of what was happening. But even Kirito had a perfectly clear path set out for himself with clear milestones to follow. Reach Zakaria, win the tournament, get into Swordcraft Academy, finish as top student, win 4 Empires Unification Tournament, earn an audience with the leader of the Axiom Church to use the admin console in order to log out. We had narrative milestones to keep striving towards. That was all set out in the first Alicization book. In Unital Ring, we're just swung into a misty forest, constantly getting confronted by hurdles out of nowhere with no clear game plan to chase after, and goddamn we have 2 main stories with both of them shrouded in mysteries. Even Google Docs is surprised right now and wants me to fix the text to say mystery in singular, but I cannot do that because in Unital Ring we're drowning in mysteries, none of which are resolved while more and more pile on. And that's what I mean by going through B plot, C plot, D plot, all the way to the Z plot. And when none of them are reasonably resolved or addressed, well, the main story refuses to progress either. That gets frustrating at best or causes significant disinterest in the story at worst. But how does the 6th volume of this Unital Ring saga fare in comparison? Well, it does finally tie a loose end, which is brilliant. But I'm gonna take points off because it's not a loose end Unital Ring had introduced in the first place, but rather yet another plot thread added into the convoluted mess that is the Unital Ring saga from way back when in Moon Cradle instead. Let's go through the Unital Ring 6 story beat by beat, and the book actually gets a lot better around the halfway point, so you better buckle up with tons of ranting before we get to the good bits. We continue where we exactly left off in the previous book in Underworld. Ronye, Tiese and Selka were woken up from their deep freeze, and particularly Tiese is dumbfounded by the Yu-Gi-Oh lookalike in front of them, that is Eolyne Harlands, the commander of the Integrity Pilots. And just then and there, 5 pages in, the book just makes me scream in agony as to why we now have half a dozen people shocked by Eolyne's appearance, yet not a single one of them actually asks a single question. And don't come to me with that, oh, they just don't want to be rude or startle him. Not after Kirito cried in front of him for not being Yu-Gi-Oh! Half a dozen girls clearly froze up in shock right in front of him numerous times, and also from Eolyne's point of view, if half a dozen people froze up looking at me like they saw a ghost, some of them, muttering a name I don't recognize, some crying after a dead person from 200 years ago, I would have some questions instead. But once again, all of that is shoved aside. Tiese immediately accepts the carbon copy of her teenage love is 100% not Yu-Gi-Oh! Apparently, and then Kirito in his inner monologues has the audacity to say things like, Eri seems to know what's going on, and you will hear me say this quite often. This seems to be Reki's new way of just shrugging things off, trying to act self-aware. He has been doing this quite often, in Unital Ring as well as in the later progressive line novels, mentioning an obvious link or reference to a mystery sitting right in front of our faces, but the way he does it literally reads like addressing the obvious but never following up on it, which just makes it all the more frustrating. Somebody just ask the damn question and resolve one mystery at the very least. Just please, someone ask. But yeah, as I said, once again, no payoff. Everything shrugged off, and Kirito and Asuna must be locked out of Underworld, while Kojiro Rinko allows Alice to stay longer to spend time with Selka in Underworld. Moving the scene over into the real world, Kikoka drives Kirito and Asuna home while giving Asuna a robot kitten that is planned to be turned into a commercial product in the future. He needs her to take care of and test the kitty, because during their internal tests, the cat's learning algorithm eventually caused it to attempt walking on 2 legs due to only interacting with humans. So a lot more QA testing is to be done to iron such kinks out, and of course, Kiko also has the ulterior motive of impressing Asuna's father, Yuki Shozo, in hopes of a partnership on the cat product release. During this cute business conversation, it is also brought up that Kikoka also had the brilliant idea of using Alice's external storage to bring a cat AI straight from Underworld, which is, well, knowing Reki, this feels like one of those things that would eventually come back at some point in the story for some big twist. Reki is not known for his subtlety. After dropping Asuna off at her home, Kiko also had a chat with Kirito about whether he had found out anything about the real-world infiltrator in Underworld, and this dialogue, it only serves the purpose of reminding you that the plot has not progressed one bit since 5 books ago. Because no, of course he didn't make any progress on the real-world infiltrator. At home, Asuna logs back into Unital Ring with Kirito following shortly after. We learn that their log house now counts as a settlement core that provides stupid crazy buffs. Honestly, I wish the survival mystery game aspect was a bit more grounded here. Much like the level 1 language proficiency being enough to understand 80% of any foreign NPC language, which makes you question what point it has to grind it up any higher, the log cabin bonuses as the settlement core are so powerful yet awfully specific that helps the plot that it is frustrating the way they're designed. Now, let's have a look, shall we? Level 1 bonus. Around the log cabin, you have a chance of executing attack skills that you do not meet the requirements of yet. Wait, what now? So, let's have a look at that. You either assume the position for a skill and just hope it activates based on this chance of activation, or, as you do stuff, normal stuff, you accidentally assume a random pose, which ended up being a skill activation position, and suddenly unleash the attack despite not intending to. What kind of a bonus is this? Level 2 bonus. Around the log cabin, tamed monsters don't lose affinity, thus no need to be constantly fed, and gain bonus 20 defense. Okay, well, that's pretty sensible. Safe zone allows you to log out without worrying the animals becoming hostile, and if you get invaded, your pets now have more defensive power. I'm sure level 3 is just as sensible of a bonus, right? Level 3 bonus. 100,000 additional durability for all buildings around the log cabin, and they don't lose durability over time. Seriously. For reference, a basic defensive wall has about 500 durability. Not 500,000, 500. That is literally a 20,000% defensive buff. What is even the thought process here with this bonus? With every single reveal of a mechanic or game system in this world, it just feels like there's absolutely no balance here whatsoever. You know, for 4 or 5 volumes we were always speculating how Mutasina got such a powerful magic that allowed her to enslave the entire ALO population, since her spell could pretty much incapacitate everyone with no drawbacks at all. We speculated that she may have some connections to the Unital Ring incident. Maybe she's just outright cheating, maybe found an exploit, maybe was informed of an exploit, who knows? But goddamn, it more and more feels like she just had the spell, because otherwise Reiki would have no way of having that unified army to attack Kirito and co, and literally no other reason. Anyways, Unital Ring. Right afterwards, we learned that the group led by Klein has attacked the first main dungeon of Unital Ring, and you see, Unital Ring is made up of, well, rings. Each ring has a higher plateau than the one before, and it cannot be scaled from the outside of that ring, and only can be ascended via these stairway dungeons on the cliffs. So far, there is no mechanic to force people into the inner rings like a typical battle royale game you would be playing today, so progress and the risk that comes with it is entirely optional as things stand. The goal, of course, is reaching the exact middle point of this ring structure. So anyways, Kirito and Asuna then head to the dungeon and come across Klein and co fighting a Golem Labyrinth boss. Tons of references to Fuscus the Awakened Colossus from floor 5, which is probably because Reiki was also involved with the Scherzo movie script during the time he was writing Unital Ring VI. And if you read the light novels, you know about seemingly random references popping up between Progressive and the main series novels when he writes them simultaneously. This happens quite often. Either way, the references to Fuscus, they really do not do the Golem fight in Unital Ring any favors. It's like comparing an incredible Italian pizza to a single Haribo gummy bear. Yes, in fact, I just had pizza as I was writing this, and if Reiki can make unnecessary references, so can I. Either way, Fuscus is pretty much the pinnacle of Sword Art Online boss fights, and the Mr. Golem over here, the statue of Aorda, it's not a lame fight, but we arrive on the scene mid-combat and just barely turn the tables by Kirito figuring out a mechanic where you have to destroy the oil lamps around the room, which would cause the oil to pool under the boss's feet and cause it to topple over with sudden movements, and then another member from the ALO players, he cleverly takes charge and cheeses the boss by literally running laps around him, causing him to constantly spin around its axis in rapid fashion and eventually slip up constantly. It's a creative and good solution, no complaints about the fight, it's a nice fight. But if it's just a random mini-boss, maybe don't set up expectations by randomly bringing Fuscus up, or not even expectations, just mentioning Fuscus as a direct reference reminds me how great that battle was, that I just feel let down by this measly mini-boss now that really has nothing going on for it aside from, yeah, just play the game. And as I always say, just play the game, it is not a good story, especially if nothing particularly interesting is happening in said game. But I feel like we reached a good point to mention that, particularly in Unital Ring VI, the story is written in a way that clearly has an anime in mind, and while that will probably benefit the eventual anime adaptation, it is terrible to read through. You see, in weekly anime form, the adaptation usually tries to end on a cliffhanger moment or, portray events as if they are cliffhangers to keep people interested for the upcoming week. This can lead to some pacing issues because it requires you to bend the story a bit. Either bring it to a crawl to not skip over the cliffhanger moment for the end of the episode, or the other way around. You need to rush to that cliffhanger moment for the end of the episode. Which is why being written with a structure of anime in mind is great for the anime. Not so much for the actual book itself. We constantly switch back between Unital Ring and Underworld settings much more than ever before, almost like each part is designed to be roughly 7 to 10 minutes each in adaptation form, which matches the Part A and Part B structure of weekly anime, with the ad break in between for the TV release. And each of those parts ends in a cliffhanger note that tries to act as if it's very important or life-threatening, and that just contributes to the story becoming exhausting, I'll be perfectly honest. And I keep coming back to that Unital Ring VI, while the best story in Unital Ring arc so far, it is tiring to go through. Once or twice, sure, these scene changes make sense and are natural. Like when Kirito and Asuna log out from Underworld, we switch to the real world. And while I understand these two narratives are going in parallel, nothing between the Underworld plot and the Unital Ring plot is ever vital or time sensitive enough that we need to switch back and forth between Unital Ring and Underworld about every 10 to 20 pages, if that many at all. We could have easily continued the Unital Ring narrative for 80 pages, starting from the town to the Labyrinth to the event that is gonna happen after another change back to Underworld. And once that Unital Ring side is concluded or reaches that time-sensitive point, we could just change back to Underworld, go through the story over there in a single go, also bundling the Underworld parts together for another 60 pages or so until the critical moment is reached on the Underworld side as well. Then we start switching the scenes back and forth. Heck, a great example of this was the early war of Underworld, when the Great Eastern Gate collapses. While we were constantly shifting back and forth between different battalions and groups, each battalion had a self-contained story with a key part to play in the war. Düsselbert was successfully holding everyone back, we switched to Eldrie failing to contain the goblins, we switched to Fanatio and Dakira against Sigurosig, then we switched to the backlines of Eldrie where Renly has to now deal with Eldrie letting the goblins behind and all that kind of stuff. We don't just fragment the entire story for no reason, but actually fragment them because the narrative actually requires and benefits from it, because everything is sequential and there are time critical moments where we actually need to do that switch or have a scene before the other and all that kind of stuff. You see what I mean? And with that info in mind, I'll talk more about it as we go through more of the story now. It will be very obvious, don't worry. We switch back to Underworld. Alice eats something with Selka, learns that Asuna invented ground heating in Underworld, and that's pretty much one of her most amazing and prized accomplishments, it seems, as the famed Star Queen, baking cakes and decorating kitchens. It's downright annoying how cheesy all of these Star King and Star Queen stuff are, and even the self-awareness of it. Like Kirito going, what kind of an idiot invented this stupid mechanism every single time he encounters one of Star King's stuff? It's chuckle-worthy the first time, sure, it's neat, but it very quickly devolves into, please stop making memes out of these well-established characters, which already happened like a volume or two ago. Yes, we were with Alice and Selka, yeah, sure, I kind of went on a tangent there. They go up the stairs, and what used to be the Senate is now a storage for statues that are in fact deep frozen Integrity Knights. So yes, we're bringing more characters into the mix who were thought to be dead or left behind in history, which makes you question all the more as to what the point of the 200-year skip was, aside from things being magic fuel tech now to appear cool and cater to a sci-fi audience. Yes, Alice and Selka story, I went on another tangent there. We have a look at the statues. Eri tells Alice that it's her and Selka's decision to wake the Integrity Knights up, and then we go up another set of stairs, and then we switch back to Unital Ring before anything happens. This is just annoying. The entire thing reads like back-to-back TikTok clips. Barely anything substantial in them. The reveal is huge, sure, but on its own, it is hollow, is the word I wanna use. That's how it feels when the plot does not progress despite a myriad of things happening. Anyways, back in Unital Ring, since we switched scenes, we reach the second layer after defeating the statue Golem boss, an open plains field, but oh no, Yui gets kidnapped by a monkey-like figure. That's it. That's the chapter, barely filling 10 pages in the book. It's a massive cliffhanger though, which is why it exists, so if you want to know what happens to Yui and how Kirito and Asuna react, stay tuned and keep watching my summary as we switch back to Underworld now once more. Annoying, isn't it? Now, these 11 pages in Underworld are actually decently interesting. We get a basic explanation about the plot of the Black Emperors, which is the story of Moon Cradle. It was called the Black Emperors Incident because the Wesdarath Emperor, who was the only one out of the 4 emperors who survived after Fanatio burned down his residence, recreated the other 3 dead emperors out of clay and using their family heirlooms to act as a catalyst of their memories. Thus, well, their skin was black. A detail Unleash Blading mobile game completely forgot and even attributed the title Black Emperor to be a title for the single person behind the plot, rather than the black-skinned replicas themselves that brought that title into existence in the first place. Tangents. That's exactly how it feels to read recent Reiki books due to how much random tangential references there are, so you better enjoy my tangents as well. Anyways, the Integrity Knights, based on their choice, either lived the remainder of their lives or decided to go into deep freeze after they thought the rebellion was fully quelled, just in case they'd ever be needed in the world again. All the knights you know are stored safely, as well as some additional ones, including number 10. Just mentioning that casually because Edith fans from Unleash Blading will be asking that question for clarification. Not that it'll be Edith guaranteed, but still, there is an available number 10 that is stored on that floor. And in addition to all this exposition, there is also a good reminder of the chain of authority in Underworld. Remember, Underworlders cannot break established rules and orders that were established by their superiors. But the Rebellion people see the Unification Council as usurpers of the Axiom Church and that they fight in the name of the Pontifex, thus they do not abide by the Unification Council's rules and orders. Furthermore, if someone on the level of an emperor were to rise up, and remember, because Underworlders cannot lie, if someone claims to be from the heritage of the Imperial bloodline, that must mean they are rightfully an emperor. There would theoretically be nobody to oppose them in that hierarchy, as both the Star King and Queen are officially no longer in Underworld, which was why Alice decided to wake up the Integrity Knights, as they can act as a higher authority figure, preventing people from swaying into the rebellion faction. So yeah, that is quite the focused and very well written chapter right there, but it ends there with that exposition. But the next following chapter in Unital Ring is equally good. As you can imagine, at this point, Unital Ring arc finally starts ramping up. A great chase sequence with Kirito and Asuna chasing the monkey who kidnapped Yui, a good fight sequence once they actually reach and confront the monkey, who turns out to be an actual player from the game Apocalyptic Date, a dystopian post-apocalyptic furry game. Kirito and Asuna have a talk with the monkey and his group to figure out why they kidnapped Yui in the first place, which turns out they realized Yui was very fluently able to communicate with NPCs that require language proficiency skills and that they needed a translator to act as a middleman between them and a hostile group of NPCs that attacked them on the second layer after they started cutting down some trees to create base on the new layer. And that's a great little detail that Reiki included right there, because if you read the progressive light novels, you all know that trees are very much sacred for a very specific race of NPCs. The NPC faction was not just hostile to the ApoDate players for no reason, they were simply enraged by seeing them desecrate what they deemed sacred in the first place. And all those puzzle pieces come together when an ApoDate player recalls a recurring word like a chant, Liusula. Both Kirito and Asuna immediately recognize the homeland of the Dark Elves, of course, now certain that they are the same race that they met back in Aincrad as part of the Elf War campaign. But before that thought process continues, you guessed it, we switch back to Underworld. Suddenly the entire Central Cathedral starts shaking as the ships that took off from Admina in the previous volume reach Cardina and start bombing the Central Cathedral. With incarnate bombs, whatever that's supposed to be, but it's just one of those aspects that are just there for the namesake and doesn't really mean much. You know from Alicization that the Central Cathedral has auto-regenerating walls, but Aery states that the incarnate bombs can neutralize the healing ability of the walls. What are incarnate bombs? Nobody really knows. We know objects cannot cast Incarnation. The only exceptions are divine weapons that act as pseudo-floodlights based on their past, if you can call it even that rather than an attribute. A weapon perk, you know, that is uniquely designed by the system. So the only real exception to the objects not being able to cast Incarnation is pretty much the Blue Rose Sword, where part of Yujo's soul resided in, which is no longer the case since the end of War of Underworld. So what are these bombs, incarnate bombs, that apparently do some incarnation-y thing? Reki really uses Incarnation as a cheap way of upping the stakes at this point. In fact, it's been a while since he was using it as this. And then, you know, he solves the artificial stakes he upped to with more Incarnation by just adding more Incarnation, but to the opposite side. It feels no different than your typical shonen show at this point. Oh, I'm using 200% power. Is that so? Then I'll use 300% power. It's just a stupid tacked on word that no longer means anything other than I do whatever the fuck I want. But it gets even funnier when the incarnate bombs aren't really doing anything incarnate anyways, but rather the damage they are causing through normal means is just draining the spatial energy reserves of the walls, so that the walls are just not able to find the resources to heal themselves back up. It's just doing a lot of damage very fast. You know, it's one thing to carelessly up the ante with your meaningless buzzwords. It's an entirely different thing to actually fail to even attempt making it matter in the first place. Anyways, moving back to our scene. Alice orders Selka to prepare the Integrity Knights to wake up, and she rushes upstairs while some figure from the ship displays a huge hologram in front of the Central Cathedral, declaring himself to be the rightful ruler of the human empire as the last remaining person from the imperial bloodline, Emperor Agmarl Wesdarath VI, and that unless the Unification Council relinquishes the power to him, he would destroy the Central Cathedral. And with that declaration, change the scene. Luckily, Kirito has to take a bathroom break once things have settled with the ApoDate players. What a coincidence that he suddenly receives a call from Alice at that very moment, who tells him about the attack. Quickly, Kirito logs back into Unital Ring, apologizes to everyone, and quickly logs out again with Asuna this time. But they are both in their own homes. It should take a while to get to Roppongi to log into Underworld, and Agmarl only gave them 10 minutes to make a decision. Scene change. Actually, I don't want to make fun of the scene change because I actually love this Underworld scene a lot, because it once again utilizes the power dynamics and Underworld lore to its full extent. Alice emerges in front of Agmarl's hologram using Aery's elevator disc and proclaims that she is an Integrity Knight of old, hoping to exert some authority, but as we know from the Mooncradle side story, the Emperors no longer see the Knights as authority figures but puppets of the Council. But the key thing here is, Agmarl knows that not everyone sees it that way. He still wants to manipulate the common citizen, so he cannot let the average citizen or people who may have wavering allegiances within his group to think Integrity Knights themselves are back, so he shrugs Alice off, claiming that she is lying, which nobody should actually think is true, because even though Alice can lie thanks to having broken the seal of the right eye, nobody else knows that and must think that she is telling the truth and all. But the amount of these layers, I just love these kinds of things. That's how you create loopholes. Even in thinking procedures within the citizens, you can create these kinds of loopholes. I can gush about these things for an hour, but the key thing is Ogmarl is scared of the effect Integrity Knights may have on the populace, and well, the Knights are powerful, so he wants to get rid of them for good. And somehow, Alice and Ares suspect he knows about the Senate storing all the remaining Integrity Knights in deep freeze, so he's specifically firing there in hopes of blowing the floor up. And just when Alice properly confronts Ogmarl and Ogmarl decides to bomb Alice directly, we change the scene. No, we're not going back to Unital Ring this time, that part is done. We're still in Underworld, but in Integrity Pilot's HQ. That place is also under attack to prevent them from getting airborne at all. Eolyne, Lorane and Stika are there as well. The rebels are also trying to capture Eolyne, but Laura and Sti just can't reach him as enemies are attacking with armored minions blocking the way. And this allows Ronye and Tiese, the most badass scene they will ever have in the series, that makes me really excited to see this specific cut in anime form. As they jump in through the glass without stopping or any kind of hesitation, just obliterate the minions with a single move. Such a great moment for the girls. Although it also brings attention to another problem I have with Underworld in general actually, as Laura and Sti are amazed by the 7-hit combo Aincrad style skill Deadly Sins. They make some mentions about how they're not sure if they'd ever be able to pull it off with a lifetime of training, and all I can think of is just hold the sword in the initiation position. This was a thing back in the Alicization saga as well, but not only were people just inept at actual combat back then, but sword tricks were basically just a show, a dance, so most of the time sword skills were more of a hindrance than benefit, as it may cause you to accidentally hurt others, thus people preferring free motion or just one-hit sword skills rather than long-form sword skills that may keep you locked into an animation you can't control. But you know, when top Integrity Pilot prodigies talk about how they can't initiate a sword skill even after so much training, I feel like that draws too much attention to a clearly stupid discrepancy. They're not talking about their levels being insufficient, let's make that clear. They are talking about actually not being able to use a skill properly or thoroughly, which is something I don't understand. I think this is just a bad artifact of attempting to create a power differential between capable and incapable swordspeople that just does not work once you're already in the capable category yourself, and Reiki is better off not drawing such clear attention to it. But with that, we switch back to Alice once more, as she's barely blocking missiles from Ogmarl's spacecraft. And just when all hope was lost and Alice was getting ready to pull a huge gamble to pierce the missiles with what little was left of her Osmanthus Blade's durability, an incarnate shield blocks all the missiles from reaching her. As she turns back, Kirito is there. And of course, Wrath was able to develop a portable soul translator, which Kirito just used from his bedroom to immediately switch from Unital Ring to Underworld. Like, I seriously don't understand creating an artificial stake and then solving it with something that nobody could have seen beforehand, you know? It's just, if a random problem is going to have just as much of a random solution, it doesn't feel satisfying. That's the only way I can put it. But Kirito had to leave immediately to save Eolyne Harlance at the Integrity Pilot base, and just as Alice was about to question what she would do without him, a beam of light pierced through right above them and through the holo projector, so Kirito had no need to respond anymore. Alice turned around and saw Fanatio smiling back at them from the top of the Central Cathedral. But before we see any more of Fanatio, of course, we switch scenes again. This time we join Eolyne in his study room from the perspective of his bodyguard, Lagi Quint, who turns out to be the descendant of Miss Azurica from the Swordcraft Academy from 200 years ago. It really is a small world at this point. We have not met a single person who does not have a bloodline connection to people from 200 years ago. Jesus. Either way, Eolyne repelled multiple armored minions on his own, but he was already exhausted from the previous adventures in the previous books, and eventually collapses in front of Istar, who's a member of the rebellion and a childhood friend of Eolyne, who aims to capture Eolyne right now. But just when Eolyne collapses, Kirito opens one of those cardinal doors via Incarnation for the second time in the story, mind you, after claiming it was impossible for him to do, even after he did it once. He gives a reassuring smile to Eolyne, supporting him just like he did with Yu-Gi-Oh! And the book ends before he confronts Istar. Yet another cliffhanger. But hey, at least that second half of the book was actually an enjoyable ride, with the plot seemingly starting to progress. The Unital Ring side, yes, it does seem to be progressing into yet another B-plot with the Dark Elves now, but the Underworld side seems to have the rebellion just on the horizon to be resolved. So I'm hoping we can at least have that one solved and start learning who the real worlder who invaded Underworld is, which, remember, if you look back at the minimal talk that Kirito and Kikoka had earlier, that was our main Underworld plot anyways, that we had no progress so far. So while my gripes about Incarnation continue to rise since, well, War of Underworld actually, at least Unital Ring VI has given me a glimpse of this arc finally starting to ramp up and has me hopeful about the next volumes actually starting to attempt resolving some mysteries rather than adding to the pile of unresolved threads. Or, you know, it can just go awfully wrong by randomly introducing Sortilinas, Golgorosos, and other Alicization characters' descendants in the exact same key positions as their predecessors in the society, and then following it up by bringing back those predecessors too, just to invalidate the newly introduced characters, much like Tiese and Ronye coming back and casting their shadow onto Sti and Laura. In the recent years, be it Unital Ring or Progressive Line novels, my hopes have been... they have been burnt down more than they have been fulfilled, so I really don't want to have a positive outlook, no matter how Unital Ring VI is trending strongly upwards right now. And that is the final note I have. Can't have much hope, but things are looking good. That's been Gamerturk's book club for Unital Ring VI. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions or want to dive deeper into certain topics, I'll be in the comments responding to you. Amazon link for the book is in the description if you want to read it yourself, alongside Gamerturk channel merch on my Teespring page. Fun story for you, this book was actually the first review copy I received from Yen Press directly for the main series SAO Line novels, although the book itself had quite the adventure reaching me. The release of the book was during summer, so I provided my summer house address for it, where I was during the summer of course, but the book was so late to arrive that I was no longer at my summer house, and in fact I was getting ready to fly back to Austria in a couple days. Luckily, my grandma was still there and picked up the book for me, then my uncle brought it over to my dad in Istanbul, and then my dad finally gave it to me like a day or two before I flew back. I really appreciate the review copy procedure Yen Press has, but I wish it was a little bit more timely and a bit more transparent. I can never know if I'll receive a copy or not after applying for a review copy, and out of a dozen applications so far, this was the first one that I actually ever received. But either way, thanks a lot to Yen Press for the review copy, and big apologies for the late video. I intended this to come out like a month or two ago. And a huge thanks to you, the viewer, as well as patrons and channel members. I'll see you all in the next one, and until then, stay cool. That's yet another cliffhanger! Wait, where did the book actually go?